So my friend, buddy of mine, went completely bald years ago. Just, shiny, practically Jeff Bezos-y, bald, right? Like Mr. Clean bald. But he still carries a comb with him everywhere he goes. Like the Fonzie comb in the pocket thing. He just can't part with it. So if you were watching part 1 of this week's Lunduke and Friends, welcome to part 2. Welcome to part 2. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, you're going to want to watch part 1. Go back, go to lunduke.com or wherever you're getting this show, YouTubes or libraries or podcasts. I don't know. I don't know where you kids these days get your internets. Just go and get the internets with the part 1 and listen to that, because we're going to do some continuation of some of the stuff we were having, some of the conversations we were having. Titus, where were we at? Where did we leave off? Give us the 60-second elevator pitch. What were we talking about when we left?
We were talking about Linux mass adoption, and then we kind of went off on this weird tangent about how like desktops are slowly dying off. And then it went into kind of where we left off, where it was, hey, all these little components, whether it's our iPads or these little tablets that everyone's using now instead of desktops, and how a lot of the freedoms and those types of things are slowly just kind of eroding away.
Oh. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And Gardner made a point before we had to sign off on part 1, where he was likening that exact same sort of thing to people wanting to use applications on their tablets or their smartphones instead of just simply going to a website, right? And how when you were choosing an application, you were choosing something that was essentially locked down, whereas by contrast, maybe the website wasn't, right? Was that kind of the idea that you were having?
Well, I mean, as a web developer, I can open the inspection tool on any website and, deconstruct whatever's there. Like it's far more trivial. I don't know, to
far trivialer is a way good way to put it. I like that word. That phraseology was fantastical.
Yeah.
No, I get that, but you don't have necessarily the back end to it, right? So any back end server side pieces you don't have access to. It's like if you go to and half of the web developers all minimize every bit of JavaScript into these compact little barely readable sludge monsters anyway. Like if you go to a Google, like if you try and go to gmail.com and be like, "Oh, well, I have Gmail now. There's the source, right click view source." No, you really don't, right? No. Like you really don't. Like you can modify maybe some of the CSS taggy waggies, but that's about as far as you can really go. That's what the kids are calling it these days, right? So I mean, you really don't. I mean, the reality is, I see. I don't even remember who said that. I don't know if it was Titus or Gardner or Hartley. One of you guys was making that point. Yeah, that we're going down. It was a chat room person. It was JP Dashes was making the point that we're going down that road where by the time Linux mass adoption might hit some sort of critical mass, and we have the year of the Linux desktop, et cetera, we're going to be at a point where nobody's using computers on their desktops anyway. Where they're going to be using either their phone or probably just their phone, or maybe the tablets or a few other things too, or their Echoes or whatnot.
We'll have Ethernet jacks in the back of our skulls. We won't care.
Dude, if we had Ethernet jacks, I'd be a little bit more interested. But it's probably going to be some weird, messed up wireless technology that we call 5G.
Obviously. Yeah. By Samsung.
See, I'm going to be that old man who continues to use computers until the day he dies. Like a desktop computer is the only way to use a computer. Cell phones are not computers. They suck. I hate them. I can't stand looking at them. Yes. And it's like disheartening when I see younger people who like stare at their phone literally all day. Like even like people my age, like I'm 31 and I have a couple friends who like they have like the digital wellness thing on their phone, right? If it's an iPhone or an Android, 7-8 hours a day looking at their phone with their phone. Like that's like screen on time. And it's crazy to me. I can't even imagine. I have that on just because I'm interested in knowing. Let me pull this up.
I won't look because I'm.
Yeah, I want to look. I'm pulling it up right now. It's like, what is my screen time of the day?
Point, especially
I think it's just called screen time.
Young people. There was a picture of people from my generation, in high school, compared to today's generation in high school, and the difference in the lunchroom. And it was it was really hard to look at. It was like,
it is. Whoa. Oh my heavens! I know. Yeah, you see that. You see kids.
It's just it's, and I'm guilty of that. As now being I mean. Yeah, it's weird because I look at my phone way too much. I have been better about it. I do try to put it in do not disturb, and I turn it over and just try and ignore it as much as I can. But I'm still,
it's hard, right?
It's like, I don't want to go grab my laptop. I have my phone, whatever.
I mean, you get why the kids are addicted to it. By the kids, I mean anyone under the age of 40. Like you see why they're into it. Like they're fun to use. They everything on a phone is friggin' gamified up the wazoo now.
And my nephew literally calls it his YouTube machine. So I'll walk by the bathroom, he'll be in the crapper, and I'll hear YouTube blasting as he's taking care of his business. And it's like, okay.
I can't knock that one too much.
And then we're good. But I mean,
that's not a whole lot different than keeping a stack of magazines next to the toilet. You know what I mean? I used to have one of those magazine organizers filled with like Nintendo Power and everything else next to my toilet.
Magazine cracked myself. But
Mad Magazine, Magazine, and National Lampoons, and Nintendo Power, and like I had my couple of mags, and that's really not a huge difference between that and using a cell phone to watch some YouTube. That's I guess. I mean,
it's less abrupt because you don't hear something reading a magazine, but
I mean, it's some me time, right? Like that's not though the dinner table, the lunchroom, walking around town. That's the one that baffles me.
Time, but it's just
there we go.
All right, what do you got? 1 hour 36. Is that for today?
That's for yesterday. Today is like 1 minute. So I usually average between 1 and 2 hours of screen time. I try to keep it under 2. I don't know what I was probably out and about on Sunday or something because it's all the way up at like 3.
Android, right?
Yeah, it's Android, and it's just under your settings menu, dashboard, screen time. And I was like, okay, how much screen time am I doing? And I keep it really close to about an hour a day. And that's still too much, but still, I was really curious.
Jedi Master Zahn in the chat room asks, would you rather use the Power Glove? And yes, I would, because the Power Glove is so bad.
I can't be here with that Power Glove, man.
Ooh. 3 hours, 40 minutes.
Well-being on my phone, but 3 hours, almost 4.
So I want to kind of go back to this a little bit because Gardner made a really interesting point there, right? Like about what computing is, right? Yeah. A cell phone with a bunch of locked down apps and locked down whatnots and what you can do with it. That's not a computer. Yeah, it's a computer technically, but it's not what a computer should be. And I agree with Gardner 100% on that. And it's not just because he's adorable. I agree. That's a really smart point. Yeah, it is. But I would stretch that a little bit further because a lot of times there's a lot of people out there, and I would lump myself into the category that generally get pointed at and called a little bit nutty with their obsession of clinging to older technology, right? Mm-hmm. I do most of my computing on stuff that's more than 20 years old. Most of my computing, I don't know if it's cool or not. It's just and because of that, it's what I consider computing.
Right.
Like when I sit down in front of, let's say, a Windows 10 machine or a modern GNOME Linux machine, is it a computer? Yes, but it lacks a certain spirit. It lacks a certain access to the guts of it. Is it open source on my things? Yeah, it's open source, and I can get to it and compile code and stuff. It's great. Yeah, but it's such a big, complex beast. You can't fully understand it. So, like for me, I don't consider things like really made after about like 96 to 1998 as being what computers should be personally. But I came from a slightly earlier time frame than Gardner did. So I kind of get where Gardner's at. When his idea of what computing is formed, That's what it was. That's computing to him, and he's right. And I would rather have Gardner's version of computing than the version of computing that's being shoved down my face and my mouth hole regularly by Google and Apple and everyone else nowadays. I like Gardner's reality a million times more.
Sure.
Do I want to see it go back in time a little bit further? Yeah, but only a little bit further. And I bet you there's some guys with some really rad neck beards that would look at me and be like, "You think the Apple IIgs is a computer? That's not a computer." and they have their own vision of what it has to have a spinning tape. It has to have punch cards.
Guys,
yeah. If there's not at least 20 switches that are toggles on the front of the machine, it's not a computer. I'm sure there are those people that still exist, and they'd be right to a certain extent. I don't know. Titus.
Yeah, so like on this, I watched a TV show, and there's some relevance to this topic, and it makes me think about it and where we're going. Yeah, because I mainly concern myself so much with the present and the future, immediate future too. Like, what can I practically do today on a computer? So that's kind of where my mindset stays and resides, and then I think a little bit into the future and go, okay, where's things going? And I watched this television show called Upload. It's an Amazon original. It's actually pretty good. Check it out.
Oh yeah.
And it freaked me out. Like, it made you think, and then it wasn't so much about being uploaded to the afterlife. The whole premise of the show is kind of cool, but it was more about the practical application of what those companies are doing today and implementing that. I think a lot of the actual basis of that show came from like Apple and how Apple is anti-consumer and how they go after people and basically, monetize every little thing that we do on a computer and to every single app, like when I came to Linux, probably the biggest shock to me was everything's free. Like, I mean, coming from Windows of 20 something years and coming to Linux desktop, the first thing I was like, oh, well, I'll just go buy the paid apps because obviously those are the best apps. That's like what was my mindset. And I couldn't have been more wrong. There's so many open source projects, so many things in Linux on the open source side of things that are way better than any of the crap that I've paid for on Windows and other operating systems. And it just is amazing to me how people are taking something that's open source, that's great, and honestly doing like a half-baked job and replicating it in a proprietary way and then monetizing it. And I worry so much about our future of Apple and all these other companies taking those little things and doing a worse job. We get worse performance, we get worse everything, and then we have to pay money for something that was once free. And I see so much of the society going that direction because of just basically brainwash. I think I was pretty much brainwashed to think that.
Well, it also is troubling to me when I see like companies that are like just buying into the Apple ecosystem because they can do very simple provisioning and they can eliminate most of their IT department. And it's like that's
a tempting thing.
And what the people that work for the company, the employees, are then in that ecosystem as well. So it's a win-win for Apple. They have complete vertical control over all of these companies' IT departments, and the people that work for those companies are accustomed to using Apple products.
Right.
And it's like, it's disgusting to me. I don't know.
Well, and monetizing open source software is it's tricky. It can be done. It's really tough to do outside of the enterprise space. There are some things that are not in the enterprise space that do pretty well with that. I work with one of them, and it's tricky. It's definitely tricky because you have to find that balance, and sometimes you have to, maybe more man hours than you might have if you just sold a license to a thing. You end up actually just selling yourself as in services and providing people with support like that. Yeah. So.
And honestly, that's the tricky thing about it. Like, a lot of people just say, hey, do a support model. And I think anybody from the business realm looks at this and laughs because you don't trade time for money. Only poor people do that. Rich people, they trade products for money. And that's just business 101. You go walk into any business 101 class, even though I never took one. And I'm sure that's probably or at least that should be the first thing they teach anybody that walks into that class. Don't trade 100%. Time for money.
if you lock yourself into we earn from support, what you're saying is I don't ever want to be able to retire. Right? Because that's the whole thing. Like if you're, let's say, an author or a movie maker or a video game maker or whatnot, if you make it so at some point you can retire and live off of continued residual royalties of sales or advertising or something for things you made in the past, you can retire. And that expands out to companies as well. Just to elaborate on that, a lot of companies, especially in the arts field, they need to, at least for a certain amount of time, be able to continue to monetize the things that they put that R&D time into, at least for a couple of years. I mean, not like Mickey Mouse is, patented for 8,000 years time, because that's just ridiculous. But for a regular human amount of time, you can be able to say, okay, I worked on this for 20 or 30 years. I built this franchise. I made these books or pieces of software, video games or albums or what have you, and now I can retire in my little cottage and not have to work for the last 14 years of my life, right? That's an important thing, and that scales to businesses as well. And with most open source models, that simply doesn't work. The moment people get shuttered, like is happening right now, they go out of business instantaneously. Like just to drive that point home, the Lunduke Journal, going into like this last fall, right around by Thanksgiving time, there was 3 companies that sponsored the Lunduke Journal, right? We're sitting at 1 sponsor right now. I haven't gone looking for more sponsors just because it hasn't been necessary at this point, but 2 sponsors had to stop because once COVID hit and they had to kind of pull back a little bit, they were riding the edge because support and continual support services and contracts and all those sorts of things become harder and harder to do in these sorts of environments, at least for certain types of companies. And because they can't simply rely on, let's say, the sales of past digital content and the like, they have to pull back a lot. And that's a really rough place for a lot of open source companies to be in. Some open source companies are doing great right now, especially ones that are doing online services specifically, where people are using them in increased quantities right now, like companies like Linode. Linode sponsors the show right now, right? And this is not a plug, linode.com/Lunduke. But just the same, like, they do great right now because everyone needs to be online and consuming content, and people are like, well, I'm online, maybe I'll start my business up, and they're spinning up more servers and whatnot. So those sorts of companies do great. Red Hat is probably doing great for the exact same reasons. Exactly. But a lot of the support companies that are not those core online infrastructure companies are doing significantly worse right now. That's
true.
That's true. A massive bummer.
So the company I work for right now, I work for OpenShot. And part of their business models, they actually have stuff that is beyond just their desktop application. They actually have cloud services type stuff that they do that involves with the video editing and things like that. Yeah. They're doing just fine.
There's a lot of back end things when it comes to companies too that I think a lot of people don't realize. Yeah. When it comes to the big business and types of things, I mean, businesses, how they were running 30 years ago and how they're run today are completely different. And there's a huge shift. And a lot of people have just, not just in America, but just across the pond, you see a lot of people in Europe and those surrounding nations. They have a lot of issues and same problems as we do in this regard, where most companies rely on debt and lending, and the idea of saving is just such an afterthought always always growing. Like the idea, the notion of when you talk to anybody in business, the very first thing out of their mouth is, we'll take out a loan, expand it out once you've proven your concept, and then just keep taking those loans and keep expanding, growing that book as fast as you possibly can.
Have another one in another town, or really go sideways when they go public. That's when everything goes.
But the days of old where you would get the profits in, you'd slowly grow that profit, and then you go, okay, I have enough set aside, I'm going to go ahead and open up a second branch. Business doesn't work like that anymore. I think a lot of people just don't realize how everyone relies so much on debt, and you'll see like negative interest rates and other things, which I probably won't go into. But I mean, it's just, it's really crazy time we're living through. and there's the solvency crisis. Look it up. It's crazy. Oh my God. It's a huge rabbit hole. It's like Linux from the start to the finish.
Right. Yeah. I once had a conversation with somebody. They basically said, well, I don't understand why corporations can't da. It's like, is it a publicly traded corporation? They said, yeah. I said, do you understand the purpose of a publicly traded corporation? It is to make the shareholders money. The customer is just a cog in that machine. That's it. They're not there. They are there to earn the shareholders' money. That's it. That is literally their purpose in life.
So I think this is kind of interesting. There are types of corporations that are like, so that's kind of straddle the line between like non-profity and corporations, social purpose companies, right? And I have no involvement with them anymore. This is not a plug for anything, but so the makers of the Librem 5, right? Purism, right? So they're a social purpose corporation. I believe they're corporation licensee paperwork. I don't know. I don't do paperworky stuff. Well, is up in the state of Washington, and they have that all put together like that. And what was interesting about that was because when I was working there, and I was kind of looking through how that was set up, I'm like, well, this is kind of fascinating. It basically says they have to have their articles of, and I'm probably getting some of this wrong, but they're articles of corporation that basically says we have to do good.
Yeah, that's right.
And they had to like spell out what that meant.
Yeah. I'm semi-familiar with it. Yeah, that's about right.
And it was an interesting concept because it's sort of the opposite of our first requirement is to earn revenue for shareholders. That's not their requirement. Their first thing is that they have to do good. They have to provide a social good, and they have to have regular documentation showing that they're accomplishing that in order to maintain that status. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting way to approach it. I think there's probably pluses and minuses to it, but I really liked that at least
it's very transparent. It's very open.
I like
that.
You know?
I like it's very open sourcey. I like that very much. Yeah.
I think when you get into that, when it comes to the businesses and things, and having like a company like that even exist today is amazing, and that's why it's something I would want to support.
Sure,
because too many people, like when you get into the, just drilling down to the personal level, which I think Ben made a comment. That's why I actually went into that whole spiel, and that was about people don't save anymore and that type of thing. And really, that's when I think of savings and debt and the two things. What debt I think of when I take on debt, I think of it like a prison. A lot of times you put yourself in a prison when you take on too much of it because you're now beholden to whatever you lent out. Yeah. And savings is freedom to me. And if I have enough savings, if I walk in, I have enough self-dependency now. I could walk into my boss tomorrow and just be like, hey, I'm not feeling this thing anymore.
You get to make the choice. You have the actual freedom there. Yeah,
freedom, and so many people don't have that, and it's such a and I've been in that position where you're trapped, and it's a horrible way to live.
Yeah, and it totally is. No, I completely agree. Like me and my wife, we decided, okay, like I can do all these crazy things I do for a living, right? I can run these articles and comic strips and all these other things. And this is what I do for a living. As long as we don't have to take on some crazy credit card or loan to make it happen. So like, can we, as long as we're staying in the black and we're not going into debt to make it happen, yeah, we can do that, baby. Like we can do crazy stuff because there are ups and downs in income. Oh yeah, and right now is it down? Oh yeah, thanks COVID-19. But just the same, again, no big giant credit card bills every month, no big giant things, so I can manage to make that happen. And when so many big businesses, they rely on that just to make payroll. I mean, and it's like when we see like the big payroll loans recently, whenever I see that, I'm like, oh gosh, if I'm working for a company that has to take out gigantic loans to pay me next week, I'm looking for another job as soon as things open up. Like that's like, oh dang, that hurts.
Right.
No. I don't know. We're down a deep rabbit hole now, but yeah.
Well, and I think reusing your hardware. I think it's repurposing what you have. What component?
I live cheap.
Yeah, what stuff I have. And
my studio, I live cheap, and so that's how I make that work. Do I buy the fanciest, $5,000 camera to try and compete with the? I don't know what are the people that run around and do toys reviews or whatever. I don't do any of that stuff. I just make a black and white webcam and I'm good to go, baby. So I don't have to go into crazy. I make that work. But it's amazing how many people are just like, well, I'm not gonna make it work on my budget, and this applies to big tech and open source companies too. I'm gonna do it however I feel like I deserve to do it, and then go into crazy debt to make that happen.
I've worked with people that have done that, and it's just it just blows my mind. So
I know so many people who are like, oh, I have $50,000 in school debt, and they have like 8 or 9 credit cards. And it's like half of them are maxed out, and I'm like, I have one credit. Well, I have multiple credit cards. I have one credit card that has a balance on it. Yeah. And I'm like, I would not be able to have that kind of debt. No one ever taught me not to carry debt.
That's smart that you figured that out then.
Right?
I learned the hard way. Good job,
dude.
Hard way.
I don't even have a credit card. Which I know a lot of people are like, but then how do you maintain a good credit score? I'm like, I just don't care.
You don't care.
You got your house, you're done.
Right. I'm like, I'm done. And I'm like, I'll be all right. Like, I'll put some money in the bank, and even if I don't have a ton, I'll make it work. Like, well, but how do you do that? I'm like, well, I just don't. I don't want to be spied on by every major corporation. I don't believe in the credit system, so I just simply opt out, and it doesn't keep me up at night. I'm fine with it.
I mean, I have credit cards, but they're all in a safe deposit box. They're all untouched.
So as we've been talking about, how we're riding the line, going as cheaply as we can, shoestring budgeting everything, not buying things, about how we're worried about spying and being the product and having our data monetized. We got a question here from the audience. It says, hey, this is from such as, I don't know how to say the name. How do we convince others that Linux fans aren't just paranoid cheapskates? That question is on the nose, my friend.
That's a good one. That's a good one, man. Yeah. I like it. I could go first on this one because you guys know I'm the newest to the crew as far as the Linux, Linux ethos and in a lot of this stuff. And it really, there's a lot of things about Linux that kind of just jive with me. The fact I can just keep my old hardware. Everyone looks at this huge rack behind me, and I always got to go, well, I repurposed almost every single bit of this. Honestly, this machine here, I just bought the case for about $100, and I put older hardware in it just because,
about the aesthetic. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted it to look cool in the background. But all that stuff, the entire thing all put together is, I think, between $1,000 and $2,000 if I completely priced it all out, which is ridiculous. It looks like it's way more. But recycling that old hardware is so awesome, and Linux is all about that. And I think that's amazing. Being able to recycle it, going full circle to how this hour started, I think was, hey, being able to reuse that old hardware instead of just taking your phone oh, it's been 2 years. Time to throw this in the trash. And I'll just go spend another $300 on a new phone. Think of what that's doing to you.
300? That 300 is nothing.
Yeah.
Most people spend $500 or $600 on a phone now. It's crazy.
I subsidize it through my work, and usually I expense it out. And I usually get it down to $200 or $300.
I do it maybe 5 years.
Yeah. I will never pay $1,000 for a phone. I will just be like, nope, I would rather go use well, they don't have pay phones anymore, but I would just rather use anything. I would rather use a cup and a string than pay $1,000 for a cell phone.
I just opt out.
The first and only phone that I bought new was the Librem 5.
Wow. Oh, man.
And you bought into it because in part it was an idea.
Yeah, I bought into the idea. I still don't have one yet.
You like the idea. That's the important thing.
I was the director of marketing for the company, and I still don't have one either.
Yeah.
So But hey, it does look like it's coming though.
It's coming.
It's coming. They're making progress. I feel for them right now, man. With everything going on, doing hardware development like they're doing is brutal, and I feel really bad for the position that they're in, but they're making it work. So kudos to them. They're good people. Just in case anyone's wondering, like the folks over at Purism are really good folks, and what they say is really they believe what they say.
That's cool.
They don't BS anybody about that stuff. Like they really walk the walk and talk the talk.
Everyone that I have talked to from Purism are just like me. They are nerds who are super passionate about what they are working on, and that's why. Like, I could feel that in their crowdfunding campaign, and that's why I pledged to the Librem 5, because I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for. Yeah, you can, dude. When I met Kyle Rankin at Linux Fest, dude. It was just immediately, I could like see it. We talked about the Librem 5, his face lit up, and mine did too. And like and then when I met Todd, it was the same thing. Like I was like, so how do you do this and that? And he's like, well, let me tell you, like, I got some cool stuff to show you. And it's like, I love it. They are awesome people. And they just hired David, what's his name? I can't remember his last name, but the guy who does, there's a YouTube channel where he
does a YouTube channel. Yeah, there was a guy that does a YouTube channel, Hackers Game.
Yeah,
they hired him recently.
They just hired him, and that's good. So good.
Yeah,
he's so Oh my goodness.
And agreed. I love seeing real nerdy companies doing real nerdy things run by nerds. You know what I mean? Like you feel it. You smell it. You smell it in the way they word things. You smell it in every little bit that comes out. You're like, Even when they're trying to be all marketing-y savvy, and you could they're trying real hard on that. You could be like underlying it. You know, there's someone there with a neck beard. You know, you can feel it, and I love that. I
feel
love companies like
against
that.
Their neck.
Yeah, exactly.
So I got a question here. When it comes to the actual, like, let's say we take our phones, right? Cell phone service. I don't know how it is overseas, but here in the States, it's a bit of a racket. You know, you're taking out loans just to get phones and those types of things, and I want to see companies really come out. I think I've seen a couple like Freedom Pop and Ting and some other ones that are a little bit off the cuff, and you don't have to, go into a long-term contract with them. Yeah. Right. And what I really want to see is more of the telephony side of things take over the cell phone. Like where I see like the Librem 5 or, even the Bind phone. Here it is. That's that Bind phone. I like to pull that out every once in a while. But I want to see them be able to establish like VoIP services and those types of things through like Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is pretty much everywhere nowadays, and then just not even use a cell service. Like, how cool would that be? Just ditch the cell providers altogether. Like they don't serve any good purpose.
That's true. Because the whole COVID thing, Xfinity actually just unlocked all their stuff. Everyone's basically got an Xfinity radio in their router that's basically broadcasting for other Comcast users. Now they just unlocked it for everybody. So essentially, if you were in Comcast country or Xfinity country, whatever you want to call
whatever it's called now.
Yeah. I had this idea a little while ago. I don't know how reasonable it is, but I thought it would be cool to put like a 56K modem in my server and then plug that into a landline. And then when I was out in public, I had my phone. I could just like use an app on Wi-Fi and dial home and then make a call over my landline. Wouldn't that be cool? I don't know if that would be practical, but
involved in that, like a
doesn't really work.
Yeah, it doesn't really work because of how telephony works. A lot of like the initial runs, like the POTS lines is what they're called. And those are really pricey nowadays because you're running traditional copper to a house, and that just isn't really done these days. Honestly, I have a PRI at my main business. We still don't do telephony for the most part. We still do a lot of the old school way of doing a full PRI, which is about $600-700 a month. And they pay that to have 24 concurrent calls, or I think it's 12 to 24 concurrent calls, depending on, I think it's bonded, so I think it's 24. But anyway, a lot of money to have that really solid connection just because they like every single ounce of quality they can get from it. when you get on VoIP, you still sacrifice a little bit.
A ton.
Also sacrifice things like power, and I should have a battery backup. So
you don't. Yeah, I mean, most of them have battery backups. But they usually only last so many hours. And the amount of quality you lose going over a VoIP signal. Heavens to Betsy, you go over VoIP through multiple junction points and then VoIP on two different ends, and you don't even realize how bad it is until you try to use an actual modem to do the modulation and the demodulation on both ends, because it treats it like an analog line instead of a digital line. So you're basically going digital data to the modem, modulated to analog, or demodulated to analog, depending on which side you're on and you think about it, and then sent into a VoIP service, which redoes it again and converts it over to digital, and then sends it along. And usually at various points along the way, will get converted to a few other different codecs, and then get to its destination point, and then get converted over to an analog signal at the VoIP endpoint, and then converted back into a digital signal. By that point, you take a 56K modem, and you're lucky if you're getting the CRC checking out at 2400 baud without just blowing chunks at you. It's very interesting how the infrastructure has changed in this run. I used to do fax calls through a satellite connection, which is a very difficult thing to do. It's doable, but it's a very much the conversion and the latency that satellite introduces causes a ton of technical challenges. So while I was able to accomplish the feat, I couldn't tell the end customer, yes, this will work 100% of the time, because I was like, listen, it just depends. And that's just kind of how I had to leave it. And, it's a very interesting thing when you get into some of those conversions and how that backend has changed when it comes to voice.
I do not miss a fax machine. Do you remember getting spammed on a machine? I'm talking, I had one at home.
Faxes are the worst. Faxes are absolutely the worst.
Yeah.
It's a nice.
I liked it when they got to the point where the fax machines would have the built-in buffer that you could review before printing. So that way, at least you could be like, okay, I just got spammed, delete all of that, and then print the one thing I wanted. Like, that was kind of cool. To Gardner's point, though, like, that is an interesting idea. Having a POTS line in your house with a modem hooked up to your little personal like file server that you could like dial into your own personal BBS. Right. So I have this. This is something I have in my house. So I have a POTS line in my house, it literally took me years to get the phone company to drop it into my house, because there was one copper strand to my neighborhood, which it turns out is a crime, because technically for like emergency purposes, they're supposed to have one available POTS line to each home. They're on contract with the counties and the states to provide that, but no phone service providers do anymore unless you live in an area that was built in 1743. But so I have one POTS line here. However, when I'm out and about, nobody else does. Like, nobody. And I can use, like, there's ways to do it from a cell phone. There's ways to do it over VoIP via a laptop on a Wi-Fi, but you never get decent throughput connections to my 56, a little internal 56K modem on my server. I can't connect at that. It's not possible. My line here is nice and clean, but there's nothing I can do about it.
I mean, I was always excited about the POTS line. The most exciting thing to me was like, oh, hey, it's self-powered. That's cool. You lose power. That's why you can get shocked in a lightning storm. It's because it's self-powered. But I don't know. I mean, so this house was built in, I want to say 2007 or 6. I forget. Anyway, so when it was built, we have phone jacks. I have no idea if we have POTS line or not. I don't know if I've never tested the line. We backsplashed over the main plug, so I have no idea.
Yeah. Anyway, it's
I don't know.
So and along those lines, for like the wireless side of things, I had a chat with Martin Cooper, the cell phone man, the man who created the first Motorola cell phone, about it, and he hates with a burning passion digital cell phone service. Hates it so much because it sounds like garbage. I mean, to be fair, if anyone remembers what cell phones sounded like when they were analog, it's like night and day better. Like it's so much higher quality.
You crack your service for a minute and then it gets better and you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you got decent reception in your area, you're okay.
If you had decent reception, it didn't matter what you're running. Like the fact we were using such old like little Nokia bricks and stuff, and I mean it sounded great. Like you didn't have any of the issues you have in the modern day telephony, which is just ridiculous that that's the case.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't really like cell phones, but I like the idea of let's just get the cell phone companies out of it. Let's tear down all the cell phone towers that are, I don't know. And I've just decided I'm not going to go down the conspiracy theory rabbit holes relating to cell phones. And moving on. What other questions we got, Gardner? So that I don't get made fun of on the internet.
What Linux bloat do you think is going to pose the biggest problem in the near future?
System data.
Kernel bloat.
Kernel bloat or overall like operating system, the whole package bloat?
Yeah.
So the question is, what about Linux bloat do you think is going to become a problem? And will there be a kernel to arise without bloat?
That's probably kernel specific.
Kernel. If we're talking kernel specific bloat, all sorts of stuff. There's weird driver bloat going on right now anyway.
A lot of legacy stuff.
Well, it's not just legacy stuff, man. It's the new stuff that no one uses. Like, look at like everyone talks about like how amazing like companies like Microsoft are. Look at how much they donate to the Linux kernel, how many lines of code, and like 99% of it, okay, that's a totally made up statistic, but it's a lot, is to support things like Azure. Right. Yeah. And it's like, well, I'm never going to use that. I have code for it on my computer.
Right.
On my computer right now is a lot of code, thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of code to support Azure and related things that I will never touch. There's code in here to support running VMware server infrastructures on my computer.
On your desktop.
On my desktop. I don't need that. So that's where I would say the biggest bloat comes from. Like I'm things I'm never going to use that are new that get added every day. If you read the Linux kernel mailing list, it is just a flood of I don't want that. Like it is just nonstop. That's where I think the biggest flood is, and it's not going to stop anytime soon because that's where the money is. So it doesn't matter. We're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to start adding like proprietary Wi-Fi drivers and crap like that into the kernel?
I mean, they already kind of are, aren't they?
Well, they're blobs. Yeah, they get added after the fact, I think.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I mean, we're just going to see more of it.
I mean, yeah.
And as long as I just really wish they'd keep it like, why can't they segment it out and just add modules and just be like, hey, add this module on instead of just baking it all.
It gets argued about a lot. It gets argued about a great deal, not just on the Linux kernel mailing list, but within the general Linux development communities. And it basically comes down to that's just not the way Linus wants to do it right now. And that's just how it is.
And as far as distributions themselves, adding stuff to it, I don't know how many of you guys remember tools like Automatics and
Automatics.
Basically, a thing that just pipe down Flash and video codecs, and literally, it's just
NDIS wrapper and everything else. Yeah,
it had a purpose, kind of when it worked. Yeah. But I don't know. It's they were janky.
It was janky. There's a lot of bloat in there. There's a lot of bloat for all that stuff, and it's probably going to be increasingly get a little bit more locked down. I mean, because we're already seeing that, you know. I mean, DRM, HDMI stuff.
Yeah.
in a GPL kernel, for heaven's sakes. That's redunculous. That is absolutely redunculous. That's like buying a King James Bible and in the middle of it is a commercial for McDonald's. Like it's not that it's necessarily counterintuitive. It's just it shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? It's like this just doesn't belong here. Like no matter what I think of those two things, you don't mash them together. That's it's just we're going down a dark and stormy road right now in the Linux kernel world.
Jeez.
So you think it'll ever get to a point where someone's like, you know what, I'm just gonna fork it and just fork the Linux kernel. Like right now, we already have a bunch of custom kernels where they do usually like Zen tuning and other optimizations. You got like the Licorice kernel and the Zen, kernel for Arch users out there. But I'm curious to see what happens when it finally reaches that point where people are like, you know what, enough's enough, and they just like, let's see how slim we can get it, and then strip out the kernel. And then just fork it to something a little more minimal, because the kernel, if you look at, it's like this exponential growth scale. Like, I mean, it's grown so much. Eventually, it's got to get to the point where we're like, all right, that's enough.
But there are distros like Triskel and whatnot that actually do already strip the proprietary stuff out. I mean, they're pretty abrupt about it. It's like gone. Oh, that doesn't work. That sucks. Gone.
I love Triskel for that stuff, man. I love their stubbornness.
Yeah,
they're a cool distro, man.
And there's also distros that, like the folks behind PowerTop, for example, I think they have a distro that is just really drilled down, and a lot of stuff is gutted to make sure it's really power friendly on batteries and whatnot. So it's hard to say whether it be forked. I think it's just easier to strip a kernel, honestly, than start from scratch.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's becoming increasingly hard to do that though, because things are very interdependent on each other. We've abandoned the Unix ethos of modularity and do one thing and do it well. We don't do that anymore.
I mean, it's like, okay, so you got a fork and you got a team of like 5 guys. Okay, what do we do? I mean,
and as soon as you fork like that, do you ever re-merge parts of it? And the further you get out there and you really strip it down, like you strip everything to deal with DRM over HDMI and all the VMware stuff and all the other things. Like strip it all out. Strip out all the stuff where it's doing checks for processors and throttling things and turning off things. Like just strip all that stuff out, and okay, you'll end up with a leaner, lighter, faster kernel. Cool. But well, then eventually, for driver's sake or something, you're going to want to remerge some of it, and if you do it right away, you're likely going to not have any trouble with that, because you're going to be both API and ABI compatible. You're going to be good to go. But eventually, you're just going to keep diverging, and it's just going to not be realistic anymore.
And what's comical is that, even with newer kernels, they keep boasting about how there's been power management improvement. Still, there hasn't. It's garbage. You have to make manual tweaks to get any health out of your laptop battery. I'm sorry.
You do. Yeah, you really do.
I customize my own stuff and just do it that way. But and I'll do a thing on that at some point. But at anyway, that's my, because TLP is for chumps. I'm not going to install TLP.
TLP is for chumps. That's a good quote. I like that.
But I mean, really, if you're using a laptop, I mean, you pretty much have to install TLP as a normal user.
Oh no, there's actually no. I mean, as a normal user, yes, no, but there are other far more geeky ways of going about it that I'll do a thing on it here. But
man, I'd love to hear about that. I love to hear about that, because I was just like, hey, if you're using a laptop, because I don't use a laptop typically, maybe like I'll break it out like maybe once a month. But for the most part, I don't even bother with laptops.
And you can do that if you're a system D user, you can do it in system D. But basically, you find a creative way of launching PowerTop AutoTune. That's the lazy way to do it. I do it to where I actually do a report and then grab all the stuff that it did, and then I actually do that in a script. But same difference.
Gotcha.
Well, that's you're awesome. Hardcore though.
Because I want to know what I'm doing. I don't want to be like, AutoTune. But.
I have a question for you guys. So all right, we've talked a lot of. It kind of feels a little doom and gloomy, right? Right. There's a bit of doom and gloomy, like a little bit of angst over here, a little bit of doom and gloom over here, and a whole lot of what are the kids doing? Get off my lawn over there, right?
Yeah,
so we've gone down that road. So let's say let's say there's a future 3, 4, 5 years from now, where all of us are looking at each other and been like, man, there are 18 gigabytes of binary drivers now in the Linux kernel.
Sure.
It's got all these features that we dislike. It's basically everything we dislike about Windows times a million. It's entirely possible, right? I mean, this is entirely reasonably possible. Let's say we've gone down that road. What do you run? Like, where do you go? Like, because like me, like clearly I'm not going to run Linux at that point, right? Like if it just gets so either ethically and morally distasteful or just too bloated or something like that, you pivot. You say, okay, I'm going to use a different system on this computer. We're going to reuse those computers that we bought that really cool looking $100 case for, and we're going to install a different operating system on it now. what is it that we're installing on that? What operating systems are we running? What do you think it'll be 3, 4, 5 years from now? What do you think that would be?
I mean, it pretty much already is gone that way. Like I already see a lot of people from my channel that are more of the hardcore crew start to move towards FreeBSD. I mean, that's just like the most logical step coming up next. I mean, you got to look at FreeBSD right now. I mean, they have a better IP stack than Linux. There's a lot of people that use FreeBSD compared to like Linux. I mean, it does some things better.
My wireless stack back. I mean, it's garbage. I can't. I've tried a lot, multiple times. I just couldn't get there.
Now, if you came at me with OpenBSD, I'd be like, all right, we can have this discussion. FreeBSD folks don't like hugging. I'm sorry. I can't go down that road. Can't do it. Nothing else matters at that point. So you're thinking, if for Chris Titus, if Linux just became problematic, you'd move over to the FreeBSD side of things.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Would be like,
I didn't say that.
Oh no, what'd you say?
Say that.
What'd you say? What? Come on, give it to me, Titus.
So, for me, and this is gonna break everyone's heart, it'd be Windows. Just because, like, if Linux became problematic and ran the same thing, I would probably go back to Windows because I already know how to do all the stuff I need to do.
That's assuming that Windows hasn't changed in that same time to be unusable.
Okay. Or changed to be more usable or more open. That's entirely possible too.
Could be, hypothetically.
A lot has changed in both Linux and Windows land and Microsoft land and all these places in the last 5 years. 5 years from now? Well, I don't know.
So let's say Windows stopped being there, and then you also have that. The next logical conclusion would be you guys are totally going to throw tomatoes at me on this one.
Yeah. Get ready.
It'd be OS X. Mac.
I actually like
Mac OS. I mean, it's hackable. I can get in there. I can rip out stuff. I understand the text and how to do some of the stuff.
I mean,
I could do it on my system as long as they don't completely switch over to ARM architecture and completely alienate the x86 people that they're talking about doing right now. But let's say I can still do that. That would be my next logical
It's not
step.
like Apple has ever changed processor architecture in the past.
They're not. No,
yeah.
Guys,
PowerPC. I don't think that was a thing.
68K to PowerPC to x86. Now they're moving to ARM. And I don't anyway, yeah.
I don't think.
Right.
I don't think
All
in
right,
5 years a Mac computer will exist.
So to be clear, Chris Titus is saying 5 years from now he wants to buy a Mac.
Man.
How about the Linux gamer? The Linux gamer, what do you want to do? 5 years from now, Linux is problematic, right? It's problematic. You're like, I'm done with this. Like, there's just been too many problems. I can't take it anymore. What do you move to?
Maybe Haiku. I don't know.
Yeah.
Haiku.
Papa likes that answer.
Haiku. I love everything about Haiku. I just wish that it worked.
It works. It's missing things. It's missing stuff.
Yeah. It's missing stuff, like basic things that I need.
It's missing
like
GPU stuff.
GPU stuff. I can't adjust the backlight on my laptop still. And there's a couple other like little like nagging things.
Have you installed one of them recently? Just out of curiosity.
So I did a video about it a couple weeks ago, but I downloaded like the stable beta rather than like the nightly, and people eviscerated me for that because I didn't realize.
I got hit by the same thing like about a year or two ago. I did a stable nightly, and everyone was like, "You're the worst, Lunduke." And I'm like, okay, yeah, they're right though. They eviscerate both of us, but they are right. The stable nightlies are because they're right about to go to beta 2, and so they're stable nightlies. They're just working through to get to that release candidate point for beta 2. So it's like Wi-Fi is working for some things.
It worked for me.
Yeah, and like it's
what chipsets are they supporting? Do you know?
They're pulling everything from the BSD side of things, so it's whatever they can get from FreeBSD or NetBSD and stuff like that, which is a totally fine way to go. They're basically just pulling drivers from someone else, which is hey, I like that.
Makes
not
sense to
recreating
me.
work. I'm all on board with that. Yeah. So do you like Haiku though?
I do. I like haiku. I think haiku is beautiful and it's snappy and it's like fast. Fun and it's interesting and different and it tickles me. I like it.
Right? It's got a nice Unixy, POSIXy underlying thing, so you can have a nice bash shell and all that sort of thing. You got package management. You got per thread priority setting in the UI. It's got a lot going for it. That's just real clean. But no
I would say
GPU acceleration.
I would say though, if it came to it and I couldn't use Linux and I tried haiku and I couldn't use that as my daily driver, I'd probably land on OS 10.
You would not.
I would. You know why? You know why? Because OS 10 doesn't suck as much as Windows.
What?
Windows is terrible. Everything about Windows is
I don't like it either. But
fundamentally garbage.
I mean, it is. Windows 10 is.
When I think about, when I use Windows, everything in my body aches. Yeah. Like my whole body aches, Brian. And I rage. Like I can feel my arthritis flare up every time I even think about using Windows. I hate everything about Windows. It's wrong, all of it. And OS 10 is less wrong than Windows.
You are going to be the coolest old guy. I like it, man.
When it comes to Windows, I got to butt in here and just say, whenever I use Windows, this is what I think. Those are going to be some sweet, sweet views because, man, there's a lot of market share because that's the only time I'm in Windows. I'm making Windows videos for YouTube because still 80-something% of the population uses it.
I know. It's true. It's totally true. I mean, realistically, if we're looking at it from we want to have a more successful audience load and all that sort of thing, we move over to Windows. We just do. We just move over to Windows. We do that. Yeah. We're not covering Linux for the sweet Linux numbers. I mean we can get good numbers, but it's not like the Windows numbers.
Yeah.
How many years in the future is this again? What did you say, 5?
Yeah, say 5.
Okay, so
just a random numbers out there.
Google's on OS because that's what I'm going to do.
Wait. Hold on. What'd you say?
Google's on, obviously.
Google's on.
I'm going to use the most.
Took me a minute.
Sell out operating system I can find, and I feel like that just achieves that level of I have no soul. So yeah, I'm use Google's on because and I literally have to sell my own stuff from my home just to log in because there's micropayments.
There will be micropayments for that.
You send it to FBA and Amazon, and then and then Google, of course, harvests all your data. It's great. I love it. It's never works. It's awesome.
All right, Jeff Bezos shaped robots show up at your house demanding payment if you're
Google's
2 days late.
Trying to index me in the yard. I mean, it's just it gets weird, but it's okay.
It's gonna get weird. I think I'm closest to Gardner on this one. I like haiku. In theory, a couple years down the line, if they get GPU support, and because haiku can right now do everything I do for my work except for record a show like this.
Sure.
But that only accounts for what was it, like maybe like 10% of my audience, so that's okay, right? That works. Like that would work for me. It would be a bummer to lose that out because there's just no way that you could do this show under haiku right now. It's not doable. But if they got the GPU drivers, I'd go for that. But honestly, if that wasn't the case, I'd probably just settle on FreeDOS and live there happily for the rest of my life. Okay. Yeah, because I can do because my little web comics I do are all 320 by 200 pixels anyway. There's plenty of DOS graphical packages that'll get me there for that. And then my articles, it's all plain text and uploaded to a server. I get FTP from DOS. I'm good to go, baby. I'm living the dream. I'm good. But again, like what Gardner was talking about earlier, I think we all have an idea about what computers are. And for me, if I've got a command line and I can do a text editor, I've got a computer, so I'm good to go. I think that's where I'd be at. So to be clear, so everyone watching understands this. Matt Hartley is going to sell everything to the Google Amazon overlord.
Absolutely.
Chris Titus is going to buy a Macintosh, but he's going to love his Windows PC a lot. and Gardner, the Linux gamer, is going to rage quit Haiku and buy a Mac. Just so we're on board, and I'm just going to use FreeOS.
With the System 76 shirt on, yes.
Yeah.
With the System 76 shirt.
I love System 76.
They're awesome.
Good company. Yeah, good people. Again, nerdy people, right?
Yeah.
Like you can feel it. You know they're nerds, right?
Oh, yeah.
And their hearts are in the not just the right place, but a real good one. Like I like those folks.
Their hearts are overclocked CPUs.
Before we head off into the sunset, could you guys take a moment and just plug something cool that you're doing? Just tell people something that's rad about what you're doing. Hartley, you go first because you're doing cool stuff now.
Yeah, I am. So recently I kind of walked in sideways to, I'm now the community manager for OpenShot, the video editor. And I'm walking into a lot of backlog, like we're talking thousands of messages. So I'm trying to get to everybody. You can check us out at check out the OpenShot website. You can actually check us out on Twitter and Facebook as well. And of course, if you want to, file a question or a bug or whatever, you can also hit the GitHub. So yeah,
Tight, OpenShot,
Nice.
Tight.
there is hardware acceleration now, by the way.
So
Look at
Gardner,
Look at you.
now that we got a deep connect to the OpenShot world, we got to give OpenShot another chance.
Yeah.
And then any issues we have with it, we just blast Hartley with them and be like, Hartley,
Absolutely.
fix these for
And
us.
I'll sign and be like, here's how you do a proxy clip workaround. Here's how you do it.
Oh, I love it.
Nice.
I love it. How about you, Gardner? What you got going on this week? Got anything happening?
I'm working on some really cool stuff. I'm building a website called Hello Story, and it's super cool.
The Hello Star thing is looking pretty rad.
I'm very pleased with how it looks. Actually, check it out.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll share my screen. Oh my goodness.
Oh
there you
my
go.
goodness. Look
there
at
you
that.
Yeah.
So we have 132 books right now that are available. We are working on implementing translations, like crowdsourcing translations. So you can come in and you can translate if you read other languages. You can also transcribe it if you're just an English speaker.
Nice.
That's so
And when you go in here, you can just take a peek and see what's going on with the book. It's pretty awesome.
That's pretty rad, dude. That's pretty rad, dude.
Nice. Very nice.
All right. So other than that, anywhere you want to send people to this week?
Library. Library.tv/@theLinuxGamer.
Yeah. At the Linux Gamer. That's right.
I asked them if I could change that, and they said no.
Did you? Oh, yeah. Because it's on the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Immutable.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
stuck
so
with
then I
it.
was like,
bad time.
so then I was like, can you have a fake name that redirects to that? And they're like, no.
Pseudonym. Yeah.
Yeah. Lame.
All right. How about you, Titus? You got anything rad going on this week?
Well, not so much this week. It's just something I've been working on. I've been writing a book for the past year, and
Nice.
I've hopefully I'm shooting for the end of summer to get it finished. But so many technical novels that I read or have read, I would say I haven't really been a fan of. And what I wanted to do was I've made roughly 500 something videos on YouTube. Right. And I wanted to be able to implement basically a structure around those 500 videos in book form. So I would actually do the actual written portion of it and say, hey, this is what a distro and this type of thing is. And then I would say, here's a reference to all those so you can see it visually, and then move to the next chapter kind of thing.
Idea.
I was like, I'm going to try and work on that some, but hopefully I'm shooting for around September for actual publishing.
Dude, I love that.
That's cool.
Absolutely love that. That's fantastic, man.
Right?
Nice.
That's
Nice. Yeah, we'll have to we'll tell people about that when it comes out. We will pimp the book. Do you have a name for it yet?
I was thinking no, not really. I mean,
really.
most
Yeah,
of my
that's
names are just horrible. Just absolutely horrible.
It's hard to come up with a good book name, man, especially for those tech topics. I mean, are you going to put a black and white drawing of an animal on the front? Like,
I think I got like a right now. My first idea was a door that is opening, and then as you see inside the door, it's like code on the backside. I don't know. It's the very first idea for the cover.
Or something.
That's fancy. I dig it. I dig it, man. Oh man, that's pretty rad. And of course, everybody go check out Titus on Library or the YouTubes or ChrisTitusTech.org.
Yeah.
Oh no! Chris Titus Tech is the spyware site. Don't
Just
do
Chris
that.
Titus.
Just ChrisTitus.com.
Yeah. Do not go to Chris Titus Tech. It's not this Chris Titus.
Yeah.
That's one way to weed out the Windows users real quick.
That's true. That's true. Oh.
And if anyone wants to go over, just go to Lunduke.com. There's links over there. I'm doing comic strips a lot more now. Just because they're fun and they get clicked, man. Holy smokes. Put out some comic strips this week.
Right.
I many fold more people viewed that than almost anything else I've been doing. It's like off the charts. I did these little comic strips where I did a little it's 320 by 200 an old adventure game style comic strips of just me talking about techie Linuxy jokes and whatnot, and that's it. And it's just fun. So go check it out. Thank you, man. I've been having fun with it. So I've got 2 more coming out next week and all that sort of thing. But there's shows and other articles too. But yeah.
You know what your comics kind of reminded me of?
What do they remind you of, man?
Have you ever played Earthbound?
Yeah, I played Earthbound.
Like the arcade and On It, or One It, however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Like that interior kind of reminded me of that arcade area.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, the art style was roughly modeled after that period of time, so that kind of fits in, but really it was, so the art was all made for a DOS adventure game I was going to be working on. This was so that's why it was all 320 by 200. There's toolbars, so like little walk and eyeball and speech icons and everything. And and there's a whole bunch of art assets I haven't utilized yet, but I'm just kind of bringing them all in. And I'm like, this is great. It's like an adventure style looking comic book. So we'll see. So anyway, I just want to leave you with a thought that no, I'm not going to leave you with that thought. I was looking down here at, the thought was, I have a pen that can write underwater. It can also write other words too. But I'm like, that's an easy one. You know what I mean? That is an easy one. But here's the thing. My wife and I are very competitive, right? We're very competitive with each other. And we laugh at how competitive we are with each other. But I laugh more. So let's head on out into the sunset here, everybody. Thank you to everyone who hung out with us on this Saturday night. Thank you to Matt Hartley, Chris Titus of ChrisTitusTech.com.
Openshot.org, folks.
Don't go to ChrisTitusTech.com. Do, however, go to YouTube and say, hey, thank you, the Linux Gamer, for all of your content. Thank you so much, man.
You're very welcome, Brian.
I know. I will be.
I'm gonna hug you so hard the next time I see you. You're gonna hug me to death. I'm gonna die from the huggies. Bear hug. This was from the Linux Gamer.
The Linux Gamer is a beast of a hugger, man. Oh man. So I hope everyone out there is staying sane. I would say I hope you're staying safe, but everyone else is saying that in these challenging and unprecedented times.
Very unprecedented.
Oh God! If I get another one of those emails,
where is the sad piano music? There's got to be some around here somewhere. But I just hope everyone's not going too crazy, because this has been bonkers. I haven't left the house in so long. I kind of might. So earlier today, this isn't a setup to a dad joke. Earlier today, I'm just talking to my wife, and we forgot it was Saturday. Because we have a couple of things we do throughout the week, very few things. My daughter has a Zoom conference with her school on one day, and Saturday nights I hang out with you guys. Totally forgot it was Saturday. We knew it was Friday yesterday, but somehow we thought Saturday was 3 days ago. Like it just didn't quite make sense in our brains anymore. So, oh man, we're just totally
then
broken.
Text on what was it, Friday? No,
I don't know. You did. You texted me on a day.
So usual time.
Yeah, I don't know. So we've been trying to, like, we can't go out. So we can't go out to see a movie. We can't go out to a restaurant. We can't really, let's go try something new. Ooh, a new Moroccan restaurant. We can't try anything else. So what we're doing, and this is totally not a joke, this is just something really sad that we're doing, is in order to feel like we're spicing things up in life, we're trying delivery from different grocery stores just to be like, let's mix it up. Maybe they have a slightly different variety to their frozen meal section. So we've gone through Safeway and Target and Whole Foods and Costco, and on Tuesday we're getting a Walmart delivery. I'm just like, I haven't been to a Walmart in person in a long time. I'm like, let's do a Walmart delivery.
Right.
Ooh, what is it gonna be like? What are they gonna have in stock? I'm so excited. Oh,
so some of them are okay.
I don't even know, but we're trying different things. Whoa.
That got weird.
That got crazy. Chris Titus just hit a button and lowered his desk or something.
Like he's out of lowrider garage. I don't know.
Dude, Titus, were you standing during the show?
I can do that too. Watch this.
Oh, I can't hear you anymore, Titus. You turned off.
I was standing the whole time. Yeah,
you were standing the whole time. I assumed you were in your race car chair the whole time.
Oh no! I was standing the whole time. I like this. I'm trying to stand more. It's healthier for you.
Yeah, it is.
I should do that sometimes. It's neat. Anyway, everybody, have a great week. Have an awesome time. Boys, thanks for hanging out with me and talking about this random stuff we talked about. And just to make it crystal clear, the Punisher is absolutely a superhero. There's no doubt about that. No one.
I'm sorry.
Quit your coughing, Hartley.
Is James Bond a superhero? Come on, bro.
Yes. James Bond is a friggin' superhero.
He does have cool toys.
As long as it's not the new one or Roger Moore.
Yeah, right.
I'm just going to draw the line in the sand there.
Okay.
Good night, boys. See you guys later.
Bye.
Later, all.